The cameras were rolling when Trump called it, the biggest trade deal in American history. $550 billion. Signed, sealed, celebrated. But within weeks, Tokyo pulled the plug. Japan's new prime minister just tore up Trump's deal on live television, calling it a threat to our national interest. According to Reuters, Japan's finance ministry refused to transfer a single dollar until Washington gives up control of their money. The yen's crashing, Wall Street's panicking, and Trump's furious. Because this isn't just Japan saying no, it's Asia saying enough. And the question shaking every capital in the Pacific is simple. Has America finally lost control of its allies? According to Reuters on October 1, 2025, Japan's top negotiator Ryosei Akazawa publicly denied reports that Washington would have complete discretion over Japan's $550 billion pledge. He insisted Tokyo would retain project selection authority through its own development bank. The denial was more than procedural. It was political defiance. Within hours, markets realized the so-called Trump-Japan partnership framework might not survive its first month. Trump had unveiled the agreement in July 2025 on the White House lawn. Flanked by U.S. automakers and energy executives, he proclaimed it the largest trade accord ever, lowering tariffs on Japanese exports from 27.5% to 15% while channeling hundreds of billions of Japanese capital into American industries. Shipbuilding, liquefied natural gas, semiconductors. According to Bloomberg, he boasted that America will pocket 90% of the profits. The choreography suggested triumph, but behind the cameras, negotiators warned the structure was vague, legally non-binding, and dangerously asymmetric. Inside Japan's Liberal Democratic Party, the backlash was immediate. Then Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba had signed the framework under pressure after months of tariff threats from Washington. By September, as reported by the Financial Times, Ishiba's approval collapsed below 20% amid accusations he had outsourced Japan's fiscal sovereignty. When he resigned, critics described his final act not as diplomacy, but capitulation. Enter Sanae Takaichi, Japan's first female prime minister, sworn in on October 4, 2025 after securing party leadership with promises to, re-examine unfair commitments. The Wall Street Journal described her ascent as a conservative reset echoing the worldview of her mentor, the late Shinzo Abe, pro-defense, skeptical of Beijing, yet fiercely protective of Japan's autonomy. Within her first televised statement, she declared that any deal hurting Japan's national interest must be reviewed. That single phrase froze Washington's optimism. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, architect of the pact, told reporters that the White House expected all partners to fulfill their commitments. Behind closed doors, however, Treasury officials feared Japan might reroute the capital through its own sovereign channels. Reuters later confirmed that Tokyo planned to establish a state-backed investment facility inside the Japan Bank for International Cooperation, effectively keeping the money under Japanese oversight. Markets reacted with surgical precision. The yen strengthened slightly on speculation. Japan would slow dollar transfers, while shares of U.S. defense contractors, prime beneficiaries of the deal, dropped nearly 6%. The Financial Times noted that investors saw the move as a quiet revolt against Washington's economic coercion. Meanwhile, in Seoul, the pattern repeated. South Korea had been pushed to sign a similar framework worth $350 billion in exchange for tariff relief. But after Japan's hesitation, Seoul's national security advisor told Reuters, "We are not able to pay $350 billion in cash." Trump had insisted the funds would be delivered up front. Korea flatly denied that interpretation. Asia was no longer following the script. Back in Washington, Trump vented during a televised cabinet meeting. "We made the best deal ever, and Japan's already walking away." Yet the administration doubled down. According to Bloomberg, Lutnick ordered the Commerce Department to finalize the new U.S. Investment Accelerator, an office that would decide where allied capital would flow, from Alaskan energy terminals to Midwestern semiconductor plants, with foreign governments granted only a 45-day consultation window. Japan would have no vote, only notice. For Tokyo, that was untenable. Akazawa told reporters on October 1st that Japan's $550 billion contribution falls within the range where there will be no FX impact. It was a coded reminder. Tokyo controls the timing and scale of any disbursement. Currency desks read it as a warning shot. Japan might slow roll the entire process. Let's pause, because this wasn't supposed to happen. The Trump administration believed Japan's conservative leadership would be its most reliable ally. Instead, the country that once championed the Indo-Pacific alliance was now quietly resisting Washington's most ambitious economic play in Asia. The mid-2020s had already tested the alliance. When Trump first reimposed 25% reciprocal tariffs on imported autos, Japan responded with what the South China Morning Post called a rare show of defiance. Ishiba had vowed Tokyo will not be taken advantage of. That defiance set the stage for today's standoff. Now, with Takaichi in power, resistance carries political capital. She faces a public wary of American pressure, yet fearful of Chinese dominance. Her solution, according to the Nikkei, is strategic balance deepened defense cooperation with the U.S. while demanding equal footing in trade. Her advisors argue Japan's post-war posture, subordinate to Washington, must evolve into partnership, not obedience. Yet the economic stakes are enormous. The White House estimates the Japan framework would create 700,000 U.S. jobs and revive industries hollowed out by globalization. American shipyards in Alabama and Texas have already been promised contracts worth billions. Bloomberg quoted Lutnick saying the plan would, quote, re-industrialize America without spending taxpayer money. For Trump, it's proof that tariffs yield results. But Japan's economists see another picture. A confidential finance ministry paper, leaked to the Asahi Shimbun, warns that diverting such sums abroad could undermine domestic investment and raise fiscal risk. With government debt exceeding 260% of GDP, even symbolic transfers of that scale could rattle bond markets. Industry voices are growing louder. Takeshi Niinami, CEO of Suntory and head of Keizai Doyokai, told the Financial Times that Japan's insistence on total tariff exemptions was a strategic mistake. But he added that the American framework offers no clarity on where funds go or what Japan receives. His comment reflected a wider frustration. Tokyo had agreed to headline numbers without detailed project governance. Meanwhile, the deal's flagship project, the $44 billion Alaska LNG export terminal, remains stuck. Reuters reported in late September that Japanese utilities doubt its economics, noting rising costs and low projected demand. One industry executive admitted privately, all the Japanese are trying to do is stall and get out. Trump's advisors counter that Japan benefits indirectly through energy security and strategic alignment. Yet even U.S. analysts are cautious. Christy Gavella, Japan chair at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, told Politico it's more official than what they had before, but less official than a formal trade agreement. In other words, the pact sits in legal limbo, enforceable only by politics. By October, signs of fracture spread. Japan canceled a planned trade delegation trip to Washington after discovering errors in U.S. tariff implementation orders. Akazawa demanded a corrected executive proclamation. The White House refused. According to the Associated Press, that cancellation broke the rhythm of what Trump hoped would be a victory lap. Across the Pacific, financial commentators started asking whether Washington's coercive trade model was alienating allies faster than China ever could. The Wall Street Journal observed that while Beijing wields influence through loans, Trump was experimenting with a mirror image, influence through tariff fear. Inside Tokyo's cabinet, Takaichi's advisors debated options comply and absorb domestic outrage, renegotiate and risk tariffs, or delay indefinitely, testing Trump's patience. Each path carried risk. The neutral analysts at Nomura Securities estimated Japan could stretch payments over 10 years without breaching commitments, effectively neutralizing the deal's political heat while keeping diplomatic doors open. Washington noticed. Lutnick warned that delays will have consequences, hinting at tariff reinstatement. But the credibility of such threats is uncertain. The U.S. manufacturing lobby, once supportive, now fears renewed trade volatility could disrupt supply chains. The Financial Times quoted one executive saying, "We wanted investment, not a Cold War with our best customer." Taiwan flatly rejected Washington's proposal to relocate half its semiconductor production in exchange for tariff relief. South Korea is quietly drafting alternative supply chain pacts with the European Union. The regional mood is shifting from accommodation to autonomy. Meanwhile, Japanese public opinion tilts further against the deal. A Yomiuri poll in early October found 61% of voters believe the framework benefits the United States more than Japan. Only 14% favor immediate implementation. Behind the scenes, Japan's central bank models potential currency impacts. According to officials cited by Reuters, even partial outflows of $200 billion could weaken the yen by up to 6%, complicating inflation control. That analysis reinforces Takaichi's caution. She can't risk currency instability while trying to rebuild domestic confidence. Yet Washington insists that backing away would signal weakness to Beijing. Trump framed the standoff in moral terms, saying, "America stands for fairness. Anyone backing down stands with China." But Tokyo interprets fairness differently. To them, sovereignty means not outsourcing judgment to another capital, even an allied one. By early October, negotiations have become theater. Each side claims progress while privately preparing for breakdown. The Wall Street Journal notes that Trump's team is exploring unilateral tariff adjustments if Japan delays further. Japan's ministry, in turn, is drafting contingency tariffs on American farm imports. The era of managed trade is giving way to open brinkmanship. At this stage, the stakes exceed economics. For the United States, the framework embodies a doctrine. Allies must contribute capital to sustain American strength. For Japan, it revives an older anxiety, that its prosperity can be commandeered by the politics of another nation. Observers at the IMF warn that if Japan fully withdraws, global capital flows could shift toward Chinese-led mechanisms like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The symbolism would be seismic, a United States ally choosing regional autonomy over trans-Pacific subordination. As of this week, Reuters reports that Tokyo still hasn't signed the final transfer authorization. Akazawa maintains that talks continue in a spirit of cooperation, but privately, officials admit they expect tariffs to return. That possibility reopens a larger question. If America's closest Asian partner resists, what message does that send to others navigating Washington's demands? Every capital in the region is watching, from Seoul to Singapore to Jakarta, measuring whether Japan's defiance will trigger retaliation or respect. Because beneath the billions and tariffs lies something older than trade, the question of who truly leads in the Pacific century. Will Japan fold under pressure, or has the world's third largest democracy just drawn the line that ends Washington's economic dominance in Asia? We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen.